Ooh. I know what we were going to talk about. Goals, Jen. We're going to talk about goals.
Oh, we were going to talk about goals.
What are your goals in life?
Wow. I mean, I do have goals in life. I have annual goals I do every year. Do you know if you write your goals down, like just writing them down makes them a certain percentage more likely to happen?
Do you ever look back at them?
I do.
You do?
Every year.
Well, because we met in December and you wrote down our goals, and then I was asking you about it, and you're like, I don't know about what we said.
No, yeah, but I didn't prepare our goal talk for February.
Yeah. No, I know.
But I wrote down all our stats, and you have access to stats I don't have. But I wrote down like what our goal was. Well, one of them was to have 500 downloads.
Yep.
Which it's not even February, and we did that already.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And to be fully transparent, everybody who's listening, we're learning a lot. We thought 500 downloads was going to be like, oh, really? It is cool. I'm very proud of us.
Right. And we have way more listens than downloads.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what we're learning. Like, just because you listen to it, it doesn't show up as a download.
Right.
So what podcasters go off of is downloads.
Yeah. Please. Actually, I saw my friend this weekend, and she was complimenting. Hi, Rhonda. She's a weekly listener. And I was like, do you download them? And she said, no. And I'm like, will you?
Yeah.
Probably that jump that we saw was her going back and downloading all of the episodes.
Yeah, it just helps our numbers. Like the listens, I think, are usually like 3 or 4 times more than the downloads at least, because nobody really downloads anything, but
yeah,
whatever.
So we hit that goal. I'll have to look because I'm also keeping track of like how many views and followers that we're getting on social media, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So now we all have to figure out our February goals.
Yeah.
So I said,
it's ambitious.
You tell them.
1,500 downloads. So that's 1,000 downloads in a month. So we've been doing the podcast for about 2 months and we've gotten 500 downloads, and Jen wants to get 1,000 downloads in February. So everybody who's listening, go into your app and download all the episodes that you've already listened to and then just delete it.
It's funny. Okay, so last week I did do a little post about this on our Instagram, but I went to what we call the wedding industry prom.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a really great organization. It's called Wish Upon a Wedding. And they do this gala fundraiser every year. And I was like preparing to go, and I'm like, I'm not going to talk about the podcast. I'm going to play it cool. But like, if you know me, I never play anything cool. But I was like, I was like, I'm going to be cool and not in anybody's face about it. And I stepped into that room with like 700 people. And I think I asked all of them to be on the podcast. I was like, I'm a podcaster. Are you listening? Do you want to be on it? The next day, I was like, God, why can't you just be cool?
Yeah, but you did get a lot of people who said that they would, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they were just saying it because they were drinking.
Yeah, probably. They're like, sure, Jen, we'll be on your stupid podcast. No, I think I'm like I'm very proud of this.
Yeah.
And it's so much fun. So I'm like, whatever.
We have listeners on 3 different continents now, and it's over 10 different countries. And it's not just random. Like, it's like they've listened to it multiple times.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I would like to have somebody on the podcast who's like a vendor in a different country. I think that'd be cool.
My friend, Yvonne, she lives in Amsterdam, and she's not a vendor, but she just got engaged. I think she's listening. Hi, Yvonne. But that would be fun to talk to her about her wedding and what she's doing over in the Netherlands.
I agree. Okay, that would be cool. I have a friend who's a designer in Berlin too. So,
oh, fun.
I mean, you know what, everybody, you're going to have to deal with it for a while. A lot of our guests are going to be our friends. Okay. Give us a break.
Sometimes it's hard, at least in Milwaukee, in the wedding industry, because Milwaukee, yes, it's a big city. It's a big city in the Midwest, but the wedding vendor market, at least for vendors who are well established, we all know each other. So like a lot of them, I would just casually say, oh, it's my friend.
Yeah.
You work with these people so much that they become your friends.
I see what you're saying. Well, I mean, I am going to say this. I hope you keep it in because I'm just curious.
Keep what in?
Well, what I'm about to say.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where you were going with that. Yeah. Okay. I'm like, what?
But it's funny because, okay, Megan and I have been doing this for 2 months. We load an episode. I am very careful. Besides when I was drunk at the prom, I don't ask people if they're listening because I don't want them to feel, like,
Right.
I don't want them to feel embarrassed to be like, no. You
Well,
know
they
what I
wouldn't
mean?
say no. They would just say yes and lie in your face.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say that I've gotten a lot of like texts and stuff from people. And every time I get one, I share it with Megan. And they're all vendors in Chicago that they're listening.
Right.
And then I'm like, how about you, Megan? And she's like, crickets. So if you are in Milwaukee and you're a vendor and you don't want Megan to know you're listening, that's totally cool. But DM me and let me know because I know you're listening.
Okay, so if you're listening, we can't see like who exactly is listening. Your name is not showing up, but we
Yeah.
can see how many people in certain, like in the US at least, it's broken down by cities. So we can see how many people in the Milwaukee area are listening and how many in Chicago, but it doesn't say like Jen Ganson is listening.
Let's make this up right now. I'm going to make this up.
Okay.
Megan and I are competing to see which city will get the most listeners.
Oh, God.
Is it Chicago? Dun, dun, dun. Or Milwaukee? So, I mean, I'm just getting everybody revved up.
But you have to download it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we won't be able to tell.
So let's see, Milwaukee, can you out-listen Chicago? And Chicago, can you show Milwaukee who's boss? Yeah, there we go.
So we were talking about goals. You know what else is exciting is Jen and I may in the future coming months here have a couple opportunities to do live broadcasts. We may be starting to dabble into that into various wedding related events where we will be broadcasting live. It's still a work in progress, but there's a couple things that we have coming along.
Yeah.
We're super excited about it.
Also in the competitive theme still, we're also going to have some episodes called Jen versus Megan.
Yes.
Where we like talk about an issue we have different feelings about.
Yep.
So that'll be fun.
So before...
Awkward transition time.
Well, I was just thinking, do we have anything else to talk about? Any housekeeping?
Oh, yeah. Oh, they say that on the podcast?
Yeah, I don't know. When they're trying to sell their shirts, we don't have any shirts to sell yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Sweep that house, girl.
So no, I think we're good. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Montego Bay with my mom. So when this airs, I'll already have been back.
Hey, Kathy. Also, one of our live shows, well, it won't be live, but we're going to do an on-location recording at Kathy's house.
Eating Tostitos, chips and cheese, just like in high school.
It's going to be amazing. I was actually talking about your parents' house. I went up to Milwaukee this weekend to visit like my pseudo family. And we were talking about how when you're in high school and your kids have friends, there's those friends that just like come over and they feel like they live there. And I was like, oh, that was me at the Ritzman house for sure. Just walk in the garage door, right? Like right into the pantry.
Yeah, of course. I feel like you could still do that now.
I'll be like, hey guys, hey, you're out of Tostitos cheese dip. What's the dealio?
Do they even make that anymore?
They sure do.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes when I'm emotionally eating, that's what I go get. I'm like, you know what? I need some fake nacho cheese.
As long as you heat it up and aren't eating it cold out of the jar.
Depends how sad I am.
Oh, God.
Okay, so you're going to go on a trip. Cannot wait. And then obviously we'll do an episode about that, which is awesome.
Yeah. If you follow my travel Instagram, Dare to Dream Travel, I think it's DTD Travel, WI. I do when I'm on location for certain trips. And Jen does this too. Like we post a lot of pictures of wherever we're traveling to. So it's a fun follow because I know sometimes when you're traveling or looking to travel somewhere, all you see online are like the professional photos that people take. And you can get a glimpse of, you know, real world photos that Jen and I are not professionally taking.
Yeah, if you want to see our shitty photos and then our like kind of okay reels that we make because we're in our 40s.
Yeah, right. My mom's going to be so mad at me by the end of this trip because I'll be like, take a picture. Stand there. I'm going to take a picture.
Yeah. Tell her you're a content creator. That's what I tell everyone I am now, because quite honestly, being any type of business owner in 2025 just means you're a content creator. So
Yeah.
that's all I do. I'm like, take a video of this. Anyways.
Okay.
Well, wait, I'm going to tell everybody our topic today because I think
Yes.
I have a great transition.
Oh, yeah. Do it. Go for it.
Well, it's not a good transition, but so I'm at the prom, right? And I am talking about the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure this comes as no shocker, but the conversations I did have about it, everybody's like, we love the pet peeves. We want more juicy, controversial topics.
Okay.
And I feel like this topic, gratuity,
Uh-huh.
we're getting into some controversial territory.
Yes. Controversial, but also touchy.
Maybe that was a better word. Touchy.
Well, yeah. It's hard to talk about.
It is.
Yeah. And we haven't prepped for this very much, so that we'll see how this goes.
I did jot some notes down because I think there's some really good things I want to make sure we talk about. So I thought this episode's, well, we hope people getting married are listening to this, vendors, Megan's mom. But I thought it would be good to talk about gratuity at the very beginning of wedding planning, because there's two things that I wanted to make sure people understand. There's gratuity, and then there's what's called a service charge. And they can be very confusing.
Yes.
Because also, even though a gratuity is very clearly one thing, and a service charge is very clearly one thing, which we'll explain, some people, some businesses, their service charge does act as a gratuity, which it shouldn't be called a service charge then.
Right.
So gratuity is, you don't have to do it.
Right.
It is totally up to the client. The amount is at your discretion. It is not necessary.
Although I will say a lot of people feel like it is.
And we'll talk about that for sure, because I agree. Because I do think we're talking about some overlapping industries.
Sure.
Right? Like a wedding, you have servers.
Yep.
You have valet. You know, you have hair and makeup, which are like people you tip in your everyday life.
Right.
But then, you know, you don't normally have a planner or a daily photographer or, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Right. Yep.
But at the end of the day, I still will always say, and I don't care who gets mad at me, a gratuity is not mandatory.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I am describing it to my clients, I do say it's not mandatory. However, I do think that it's helpful for them when I am talking about the various vendors for them to understand which vendors it's more common to tip.
Yeah, I do that too. I think I learned that from you. And I do think later on in the episode, I'd love to go through even what we recommend to people.
Well, it might be very different because we're in two different markets.
But I think that's kind of interesting. Here's who is commonly tipped.
Right.
And then here are a list of all your other vendors with the amounts I recommend if you choose to do it.
Sure. Yep. That's very similar. But ultimately, it's up to you. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will stand on my soapbox till the day I die. It is not mandatory. It is not mandatory. It should never be in contracts. So that's my belief.
Okay. Since you explained gratuity, so why don't you give the rundown of the service charge then?
So a service charge is a fee that's added on to cover costs that are necessary to provide a service. So it could be like, you know, it could cover administrative fees. It could cover like the cost of some things. You know, you often see it as like 22%.
Right.
So it kind of can masquerade as looking like it's a gratuity.
Right.
But it's not. It's all going towards expenses to facilitate the service.
And you see it very commonly with caterers.
Yes.
Venues.
Hotels.
Yep. I actually think all vendors have a service fee, whether they itemize it or if they include it into their other fees. I'm thinking florists, for example. There are some florists who I see who
Yeah,
have a service fee and others who do not. But ultimately, I don't think it's because those florists don't have a service fee. I think they just include it in other areas.
totally. I think why it's important though for everyone to be paying attention to these first and foremost. When you get a contract, read it.
Yeah.
Read it. And it's funny because in my normal day life, I read nothing. I've probably signed my life away 15 times over. But when it comes to what I'm doing, I'm reading those contracts. Well, it's my job. And ask for clarification because I will say I've run into a few times, especially for like rehearsal dinner restaurants or like at a hotel, where I'll be like, is the service charge acting as a gratuity or is that separate? And sometimes they say it is, which it's should not be called a service charge, then it should be called gratuity. But anyways, in my mind, there it's like this is you're paying this whether or you want to or not. It's mandatory.
Yeah, they're not going to negotiate a service charge.
Right.
That's in there.
But ask, because that's also a place where you don't want to, at the end of the night, then slap another 20% on there if you don't have to. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. I'm drinking for this episode, just so you know.
Oh, yeah. I should too. I totally forgot. But yeah, so make sure you're clear on that because obviously if you don't have a planner, you're keeping track of expenses yourself. And gratuity is something you should be thinking about ahead of time the whole time. Because a lot of times, like with catering, for example, like outside catering, that's a gratuity that can end up being $4,000. So make sure that you're reading your contracts, you have an understanding of what those fees mean to your bottom line, and that you're putting that money aside ahead of time.
Right, because it can be a bit more than you are anticipating.
Right. I will also say too, and Megan might disagree with me, but I'm just going to say this is how I handle it. But if there is a gratuity already put in the contract, like for catering, for example, I do ask them to take that out.
I don't really see that up here.
I think that's how it should be. I don't think you should just put gratuity in as a line item, forcing your client to pay a certain amount. You know, my argument is, to your point earlier, have a service charge.
Right, then listed as a service charge.
Yeah. Because people, like my clients get pissed when they see that. And I would too. It's like going into a restaurant on a Friday night and sitting down and them saying, no matter what kind of service you get tonight, you have to tip us 20%. I'd get up and leave.
Yeah.
So there you go. What about transportation though? That one is always included down here.
It is, but you know what? Most of my clients, I always suggest that they work with the same company because I know that they do a good job. So I don't really have a problem with that being done in advance.
I don't either.
I've never had a problem with them.
That's the only one I don't have a problem with. And actually, I even tell them to have an extra 20 per driver for me to give in case like they did a really good job and I just want to toss them an extra 20.
Yeah. Also, that is typically not like hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
No, it's not.
Should we go through each vendor category? How do you want to discuss this? What are you thinking? That was a big sigh.
I know. I love to sigh. I think it adds such a great dramatic flair to the episode.
Okay, I'll keep it in.
Okay. I also like want people to know how deeply I think about these things. Yeah, I say we can hit it by actually, you know what we should do is maybe we go through I could pull up one of my emails that I just, that I sent because I do it like you too, where it's like, here's who you kind of have to tip.
Right.
Right? Should we start with that?
Yeah, let's do the more standard ones first, for sure.
Okay, let me pull up that one of my emails.
You know what I looked at before we got on?
What?
I looked at what the knot says.
Oh, God.
I always think the knot, when people reference it, it's so funny because they have a generic guideline for everybody.
I know.
In the entire United States.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, but it's going to be different probably, I would assume, if you're listening to this podcast and you're in Idaho or you're in Chicago or if you're in New York City. So I don't think that those hold much weight.
I agree. Well, we could do a whole episode on the knot because they are also the ones that say that a average cost of a wedding, well, this was a
Oh,
few years ago, but they were like, an average cost of a wedding in the US is $35,000. And I want to be like, yeah, in her bra.
that it's not realistic for somebody to look at that and
Exactly.
okay.
Okay, so I'm going to start here
Okay.
by saying in my email I have, industry standard strongly consider tipping. And I have, let's start with catering. What do you recommend to your clients?
I always pull out the catering manager as a separate gratuity.
Me too.
So I recommend that they tip the on-site manager separately.
Me too.
And then I base my so there's mostly a service charge up here too for catering,
Mm-hmm.
which is not your total bill. It's a service charge. And so we usually tip a percentage off of the service charge.
Okay.
Mhm.
So in Chicago, what I recommend to my clients is that they take the food and beverage totals only
Mhm.
from the final bill.
Mhm.
So when you get your final catering bill, there's going to be a line item for linens and for plates and all this trucking,
Right.
getting the stuff there and back. And so you take food, you take beverage, and I tell them, well, like 12 to 20% of that amount.
Which is going to be a lot for you guys down there.
It is a lot. I also take the catering manager out and tip them separately.
Mhm.
And for any of those, I say 100 to 250 plus.
And it very much depends on the service provided, right?
It does.
Yeah.
I also just had a client that was like, had a good relationship with our catering manager because she had done other events with her. And I was like, I can't help you with what to tip her because you've worked with her for years.
Mhm.
In which case, you have to decide that.
Well, right. I mean, think about the clients coming out of the COVID years where it
Mm,
was multiple years worth of service. I think the gratuities were a little bit higher for those weddings.
absolutely. I actually told my clients to consider that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So I will also say up here in Milwaukee, if you did a family feud style survey, 100 weddings surveyed in Milwaukee, what percentage
Yeah.
received an additional tip for the caterers? I don't think it would be a very high percentage.
Huh. Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, we don't have a service charge on most of ours, so it's like, this is it.
Oh, really? So we have a service charge on almost everything.
Well, I'd have to look. I mean, we're being charged for everything that anyone can think to charge for. Like, it's
Mhm.
certainly not like a freebie, but gratuity is nothing is going to the servers from as far as I'm aware, besides their salary, their hourly salary.
Mhm.
So any gratuity they get from that event or any additional money they get from that event comes from the gratuity.
I think to anybody listening, it's so interesting just to see the differences, right?
Yeah.
It's not only differences between Chicago and Milwaukee, but it's going to be differences caterer to caterer. And so planner can do the legwork for you and advise you on this kind of thing. But if you don't have a planner,
Yeah.
don't be afraid to ask the questions to the caterer, like Jen said.
Yeah. I mean, you should know what you're paying for,
Hmm.
what you're going to need to be prepared for.
Right.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves ever in this whole world is how poorly vendors prepare their clients for anything regarding this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a venue they book and then that's it. And they don't tell them anything about, oh, yeah, we're taking a percentage from your florist. We're taking a percentage from your caterer. We're taking a percentage. That adds up.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. It's not really your responsibility, but they're your client. If they book your venue or your catering services or anything, they're your client.
So you're saying that it's not line item, like those things aren't
No,
written into the contracts?
they're not. And that should be its own episode. And that's going to be real juicy.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think I would say this when you're going into wedding planning, if you don't have a planner, assume the best out of every single one of your vendors because obviously you're hiring them. But don't assume they're going to tell you everything you need to know. And it's not because they are hiding anything from you, but in their mind, it's probably just so common knowledge. You know how they say like talking shop?
Mm-hmm.
When you've been doing something for a while, you're just like, oh yeah, that's how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need to tell them.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say, ask your dumb questions. There's no such thing as dumb questions. And like, so you know that you are prepared.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so catering, that's going to be your biggest gratuity. No, for me at least.
So interestingly, up here, do your DJs write gratuity into their contracts?
No.
Up here, they do.
Oh, see, I hate that.
All of them. Well, most of them do. The big ones do. And it's not a small amount.
So if the client has a bad experience, they can ask for it back. That's what I'd like to know.
Well, they do not pay it to them in advance. So it's written into the contract that you should tip your DJ a certain percentage. And so then it's up to the client
Yeah.
to actually do it.
Right.
So I remind my clients that it's in the contract. We talk about it at the beginning before they book the vendor. I point it out. And then we talk about it later and say, remember, this is what the DJ suggested. Now, when a client hands me an envelope to tip a vendor, I ask them to seal it. I don't need to know how much is in it. So when I have an envelope to give to the DJ, whether they actually do it or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of my clients actually do. And to be fair to the DJs, nobody has ever come back to me and said, oh, they didn't tip us enough. So it is still flexible.
I've had that happen.
Oh, really? Up here in Milwaukee?
No, not a DJ.
Oh, okay.
But I had that happen where a caterer came back because they didn't tip 20%. And they reached out to be like, is this right? And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Ballsy, dude.
Right. So I guess with the DJs up here, it is more of a suggestion. However, it's clearly written into the contract, which is, in your face a little.
We've obviously hit a hot button for me because it makes me mad. I think it makes me mad because I know how much money my clients are spending. My clients are spending a shit ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to tip. My clients want to tip. I rarely have a client that does not tip.
Mm-hmm.
I had to laugh when you said that it comes in sealed envelopes because that's typically how it happens for me. But actually, I had a wedding a couple months ago where they just handed me a stack of cash.
Oh, geez. I'd be like, I cannot take this.
So I always make the joke whenever the envelopes get passed off to me because I get them at the rehearsal.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, you're never going to see me again. And everybody laughs because, it's like, I'm obviously not going to get far on like $5,000, but,
right.
But the groom gave me the stack of cash and he goes, just give the top of everything you recommended. And so then I had to go in. I mean, I did it. It's not preferred, whatever, but yeah, it boils my blood because gratuity, look up the definition. Just look it up. And it's not mandatory. And if you want to make more money to pay your team, charge more.
Mm-hmm.
I just hate that culture of like, well, we don't want to pay our people more, so we'll just make sure the client does. It's like, we'll do that in a way that is at a service charge.
Yeah, it could be a service charge then. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then let the power of the gratuity remain with the client. Because I think the clients love to feel like they're doing something.
Yeah.
Like they love to be like, thank you so much. Here is extra money.
Right.
Because that's how much we loved you.
Yeah.
And when it's in the contract, that feels so icky to me.
So I also, a lot of times will get the envelopes at the rehearsal dinner. So I don't know what you do, but I don't hand them out right away. I wait to see how this shakes out.
I don't either.
And if the bride and groom or the parents, because a lot of times I work with couples where their parents are paying for the wedding and they are paying this gratuity. If at the end of the night, they're not drunk as a skunk and they're still there and I still have the envelopes to like pay the band or the DJ, I go back up and I say, would you like to give this to them yourself? Because I do think a lot of people like to thank that person
yes,
themselves.
Totally.
I'm hanging on to it for them. But, when I hand somebody an envelope, they say, oh, thank you. And I always say, and they know this, but it's like, oh, it's not from me.
Yeah.
This isn't my money I'm giving you. It's from the couple. So it gives them the option to go thank them themselves.
Yeah, I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
I do the same thing. I don't hand out envelopes. And I have only ever in my life had an end of the night happen where I gave one of the envelopes back to the couple.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'd gotten close with this couple. I'm still friends with them.
No surprise to anyone.
Yeah. And the bride goes, ooh, is there tea? And I said, there is tea. We'll talk tomorrow. And she was like, sounds good. But that was down in New Orleans, and that band showed up 2 hours late, and we had to delay the ceremony by a half an hour. So yeah, they were not getting gratuity.
Yeah, I had that actually happen one time with a band as well. And it's a band I don't work with very often at all. I don't think I've worked with them since this happened many years ago, but they showed up and I was counting the band members and they were one short.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody approached me ahead of time and let me know that somebody was sick or something happened. If they would have told me something like that, it would have been like, okay, no
Yep.
problem, like whatever.
Yep.
But it was almost like they were trying to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I called them out on it, not letting the couple know,
Yeah,
if they
of
noticed,
course.
I would have explained it, but I'm not ruining their whole evening about this, right? The
Right.
band went on. But then afterwards, I reached out to them and there was a little back and forth about, because I wanted them to refund the couple
Yeah.
a certain amount of money because they did not provide all of the band members that they said, which I thought was reasonable.
Absolutely.
And because they felt like they got away with it because the couple didn't notice.
Oh, no.
They weren't going to say anything.
Okay, we have to do a whole episode on that because my mind just went like ding, 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 ding of like a bunch of stories that I could share about like when we go back and ask for refunds, which I know you're the exact same as me. There aren't a ton of stories.
No, not hardly any.
This isn't our MO, but I still think it'd be a good episode.
Okay, so we talked about DJs and then we kind of talked about bands. So what do you do with bands?
So bands, I do. Well, first, no, wait. We were going through. We jumped around.
Okay.
So let's go back to who you should tip.
Okay.
Catering, absolutely.
Yep.
Hair and makeup, absolutely.
Yes.
20% of the total service amount, just like when you'd go get your hair cut and colored.
Yep. We have a lot of people up here that do include that in their contract as well.
Oh, God, help me. Okay, well, whatever. I'm going to keep bitching about it. And then this is an interesting one, but I have it on here because I think people don't think about it. But if you're staying at a hotel, which most of my clients do, have cash for the bellman because they're going to be the ones helping load all of your shit. You'll have 3 cartloads of shit that go up to your hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
They're also there when you get back at midnight and they help you lug your drunk ass upstairs. I mean, they're just like part of the team actually for the whole weekend. So make sure you have cash for them.
Yes, I agree. I just never think about that because I don't really consider them like a vendor.
Okay. So then do you have any absolutely should? Those are my only like you absolutely should for sure.
See, I include DJs in that because it's in their contract. So I include the DJs.
Okay. And I don't.
And then again, this is really tough because Jen and I work with a lot of really good vendors who we work with consistently and know that they're going to do a good job. So there are many bands I work with where I do include that in the should tip because it's very standard to tip a band. It's like all of my clients tip a band and I don't really have shitty bands that I work with.
I mean, if I'm being, it's one of these things where it's like, you're kind of right. I mean, maybe like these guidelines of how I structure them stem back from when I started, when people didn't have a ton of extra cash by the time the wedding rolls around.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, again, we're just saying like, who are you going to look like a total piece of crap if you don't tip?
Mm-hmm.
But should you tip everyone? Yeah.
Well, right. Yeah.
So it's like, hair and makeup catering for me. And I mean, I do have a section in my contract too, or in my email
Yes.
that says transportation's already been taken care of. Hair and makeup's already, so it's like those are in there.
Yeah.
But I have then in my next section of like, I see tipped often is what I call it.
Okay.
And it's pretty much the rest of everybody. So wait, one other thing though too that I put in the like you should very much really actually totally tip is anything related to a church.
Sure. Yep.
You know, I'm not involved in the church stuff. Well, I don't really do church weddings anymore, but sometimes in your agreement with the church, you are also saying that you will donate or whatever a certain amount of money for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's again usually in the contract. See, and this rolls into my musicians, live musicians. So if you have a live musician from the church, yes.
Yeah, let's go there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So ceremony musicians and band, do you see those as two separate things? Because I do.
I do, unless the live musicians for the ceremony are also a part of the band.
Correct.
Like usually the band, when you're contracting with a large band, they can also provide musicians for ceremony and cocktail hour.
They can unless you want strings.
Yeah. Then it's separate.
So it's like if you pick two instruments from the band, like a piano and a guitar, that's included or whatever into the contract. If you, though, are bringing in a string quartet, those are typically 4 separate musicians.
Yep.
So they should be tipped separately.
Right.
Do you do per musician or do you do percentage?
Per musician.
Me too.
I give a range. So it depends a little bit on the band. It depends on the level of the band. You and I hear a lot of wedding bands. And so there's some really high-level bands that we work with out of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some bands that are great. But when you hear wedding bands all the time, you notice the differences between them. So there's a range of wedding bands. And so I think I give my clients, a range for a musician. I think most people do around $50 per musician.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they provide sealed envelopes, and I'm sure there's some people who do more and some people who do less.
Yep. So if it's a ceremony musician that's coming in just for that, like, let's say hour, the half hour before and then the ceremony.
Yeah.
I say 25 to 50 per musician.
I usually say, I say average of 25 for those. Yes.
And then for bands, to your point too, depending on the band itself, I will say 30 to 75 per musician.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I also always do is I add a little plus sign after because I feel like that gives my client the freedom to tip more if they'd like to.
Right.
Everyone's in a different situation. Everybody feels differently about that.
And some bands are very crowd interactive, which is a lot more work.
Yep.
Even categorizing bands generally is difficult.
Mm-hmm. Do you know once I'm pretty sure I had someone from a band steal Gratuity?
What?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like they took the envelope and didn't tell anybody else?
Well, so I have no proof, okay?
Mm-hmm.
This was a long time ago. I've never worked with this band since Avi. But I wasn't going to give them their tip, okay?
Okay.
Because they were supposed to take one break. They took 2.
Mm-hmm.
And for both breaks, I couldn't find them 20 minutes later and had to go all the way downstairs, and they were at the bar.
Oh, that's bad.
They also missed 3 super important music cues that we had 2 meetings about. So I wasn't going to give them their gratuity.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Well, that envelope disappeared. I had my bag in the room where all the vendors were.
That's crazy.
Now, I don't know. I have no proof,
mm-hmm.
but I keep I'm not going to tell people where I keep my gratuity because then some burglars might be listening.
The Hamburglar.
Yeah. And I'll be like, darn you, Hamburglar. I'm shaking my fist. So anyways, I had it in a relatively safe location. Obviously, nothing is safe unless it's in an actual locked safe. But I'm sure they saw it sitting in there or whatever and just helped themselves to it.
Ugh.
Is what I am assuming happened.
Yeah, that's horrible.
It is horrible. But anywho's it's okay. DJs. Well, it's in your contracts, but can you tell us what that amount ends up being then?
I think it's usually 15 to 20%.
Of what's a standard contract up there for a good DJ?
Yeah, that's tricky. I don't want to say and disclose to other.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fair. Yeah. I typically, so I'm going to go right into photo, video, DJ because photo and video, I tip a little bit more, but like DJ, I always say like 150 plus.
Oh, yeah. The DJs up here, it's more service charge. So they get hundreds of dollars.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to say too, though, that the DJs that I work with down here charge a lot.
That's true. I have asked you for DJ recommendations out of Chicago because we've needed special things and they are quite a bit more.
Yes. So I always look at it like they're compensated very well, as they should be.
Right.
And the gratuity is just an extra, like,
Yep.
thank you.
It's different. Yeah.
So I'll do like 150 to 200 plus.
Sure.
Photo video, I do one for the primary shooter and then one for the secondary shooter. The reason I look at it that way is because even though the secondary shooter is there the same amount of hours, it's your primary photographer who's prepping for this event, who's doing all of the pre-work, who's doing all of the editing.
Yeah.
And so for them, I always say about 250.
Mm-hmm.
250 plus, again.
Yeah, and your photographers also cost quite a bit more down there. All of your vendors cost quite a bit more. So I'm looking more in the 100 to 200 range. So a lot of times our second shooter is not there the entire time that the main shooter is there. And so I usually just have one envelope for both. And then the primary lead can decide
Oh, okay.
what they want to tip because I don't really know the behind the scenes of how much everybody's doing.
I know. I used to do that too. And then I just felt like it made more sense for the client to do it just because a lot of my clients actually will ask for names and not, not to be rude or but they just like want to address the envelope to an actual person.
Yeah.
So for primary photo, I probably do 150 to 250 plus. And then for the secondary shooter, it's like 100 to 150 plus.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do for I always struggle with this myself, but what do you do?
I am breathing very deeply into the microphone. I'm like,
leave that in there. I love that. What do you do for decor and
like floral or rentals?
Everything. Tell me what you do. I struggle. This is always tough for me.
So those people are very much in my optional list.
Mine too.
Because it's not thought of as standard. So it's becoming more popular up here to tip your florist. So it's discretionary, right? I think that about half of my clients will give the florist some sort of gratuity. And then it really depends on what additional vendors are providing. So for example, if they hired a photo booth and there's a photo booth attendant, I will say you should tip the photo booth attendant.
Me too. And I say give them a 50.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, exactly. Anybody who's providing customer service at the wedding and interacting with your guests, I think it's important because that's a customer service job.
Yeah. So that's valet, coat check, things of that nature.
People who come in and bring an ice cream cart and they're scooping ice cream all night.
Yes.
Or
coffee baristas.
Yeah. I had a magician one time that walked around and did magic tricks. Like these people, it's not large amounts, but it's just something extra to give them.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Like anyone who's there helping your guests should get a gratuity of some sort.
I will also say this is why, again, like having a planner is useful because they know the behind the scenes of some of this stuff. So like, I'm not going to name names, but I work with a vendor who brings in some hard goods for weddings frequently, like rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very small business. The owner of the company personally delivers this stuff herself with her husband and sometimes her kids. Like I say that you should tip them because it's not just some big company with 100 college kids unloading some stuff that they don't care about. Like, I
Right.
see how much time they come in with their stuff, wiping it down, making sure it looks fantastic. So just knowing your vendors, who they are and what they're going to do, I make personalized recommendations based on that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I also think too, like, because I was just gonna say for design teams, so there's a lot of times that I'll work with a company down here that literally handles everything. It's like you hire one company and they're doing the floral, the lighting, the draping, the linens, the glassware, they're handling everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so similar to your catering manager, because oftentimes your catering manager is also doing a lot of the tabletop rentals.
Yep.
I pull the designer out of that and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
the lead designer here, the person we've been working with, the person who does the sample, who sourced everything for this, tip them for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, like they've just been doing so much and it's a lot of work.
Yeah. We don't have as many design companies up here. I've worked with design companies out of Chicago for bigger weddings, but I'll be honest, typically it's a lot less expensive to source it individually through the different companies as opposed to it's like working with a contractor, like and not paying the contracting fees.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Hmm.
But also some of them just do insanely cool shit.
Yeah, definitely.
You're like, we have to work with this company to do what you want to do because they're just going to kill it, you know?
Well, it's a budget thing.
It is a
I
budget
mean,
thing. Yeah. Okay, so let me go back to my listy here. Yeah, I think don't forget your like rehearsal dinner, your brunch, making sure that you are providing gratuity there. Again, that's where you just want to make sure you have like is it a service fee? Is it
hmm what about your wedding coordinator?
oh God, yeah.
Here's a hot topic and weird to talk about because it's us.
I
What percentage of your clients do you get gratuity from?
know. All of them.
Hmm. Yeah.
Up like 95% of my clients tip me.
Yes.
But same for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when I'm providing my list of gratuity, I don't say, and me.
Exactly.
What I do is I do suggest though that my team gets tipped.
Hmm.
And I will tell them like, I have an assistant on Friday, I have 3 assistants on Saturday, and I have an assistant running your brunch. And I ask for, even if one of those people is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I
Hmm.
ask for 3 separate tips because it's 3 separate events and
Hmm.
that person is coming back. So I never say tip me, which is always interesting because then the gratuities I get are varied, and
Yep.
I've gotten some also like cool gifts, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is interesting. If you asked a wedding vendor if they'd rather have a gift or money, they're going to say money. Think about when you are growing up and your grandma's like, "What do you want for Christmas?" And you're like, "Cash." And then your mom elbows you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, I'm just telling you what's real here.
Yeah.
People want cash.
People do want cash. I will say though that the times that my clients have chosen to go the gift route, they totally nailed it. So like for example, I had a client that the parents tipped me cash,
Hmm.
and then the couple gave me this beautiful diamond necklace. I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
subtle diamond. It wasn't like bling bling. Every time I come around your city, bling bling. Which was just thoughtful, and I wear it actually now for every wedding. It's kind of like my like good luck charm.
Okay.
The couple that I did the air bath wedding, they got me this like day experience there.
Hmm.
So I'm like, that's cool. I'm actually using it next week.
Oh, nice.
So I think oh, I just hit the microphone. I
That's
have to
okay.
tell you though, and if they're listening, it's fine. I'm going to tell the story because it's funny to me. But I had this amazing client. I love them so much. I miss them. We don't keep in touch. I follow them on Instagram, and actually, I think they're having a baby. So that's exciting.
So you stalk them.
I do. I'm like, remember when you guys want to be my friend? Do you still want to be my friend?
It's all
But
a ruse. The clock strikes midnight and then
yeah, they
goodbye.
didn't really want to be my friend. So, all of my couples want to get together after the wedding. So, like, that's an added gift. Like, they usually take me out for dinner and drinks. Like, it's very nice. So, I'm out to dinner with them, and they got me a gift while they were on their honeymoon. And the bride was like, we saw these and we were like, oh my God, Jenna loved these.
Okay.
And I didn't open it up, and I hate opening gifts in front of people because I don't know. I'm a fantastic actress, but I just don't want to act,
Right.
Well, I get home and I open them up, and they're these 2 ceramic plates with like deer on them.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm like, because I don't know if I give off deer vibes.
Right. What made them think of you for those?
I have no idea. But 5 years later or 4 years later, I am obsessed with those plates. I use them almost every day. When they're both in the dishwasher, I'm like, oh, I have to use a regular plate.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Sometimes people know you better than you know yourself.
All right. I'll stick with my thoughts on cash.
Yeah, you're like, don't give me a deer plate.
Yeah. I have my own china.
Yeah.
So here's something, because, people wanted juicy details. Okay, so people hand you the gratuities at the rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
They hand you an envelope with the gratuity for you. Do you open it?
Oh, yeah. The minute I get in that car.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I open it on the way home.
So I do not. I do not open it for 2 reasons. First of all, I've been doing this. This is be like my 14th year. And I know I am very good at my job. But I'm always like, what if I fuck up? What if I fuck up and have to give them the money back? Like, I need to be prepared with this sealed to be like, I was, whatever. Okay. It has never happened.
Right. I'd have to come with my tail between my legs.
Yeah.
And be like, ooh.
You just use super glue and seal it unless you spent it already the night before.
Yeah. Oh, I went to the bars last night, man. That money's long gone.
It's long gone.
Are you willing to share the biggest tip you've ever gotten?
It was a really big wedding. I don't know.
Drop it. I'll drop mine.
What? No, you go first.
I mean, this was shocking. $5,000.
Okay. I got 7 one time. But it's because that I was severely undercharging for my services and they realized that.
Yeah, that I don't doubt at all. Yeah.
Uh-huh. But that is not something that I expect when I was just telling my story. No, that is like a pinpoint way far off the grid.
Yeah, I hope people are getting to know us.
Right.
We are very, Megan and I work very hard. We don't expect a damn thing.
Right.
But here's what I'll say. Even if you don't want to give me a financial gratuity or a gift, a card is so nice. It's just like a card or something. And or even, $100 would be great. It's just, I think the reason it's nice is not the financial element of it. Like, this gratuity is not going to help me make or break, what tax bracket I'm in. But it just means that you thought I did a really great job.
Yeah.
Like, enough to get out a crisp hundo bill, throw it in an envelope and write like, we love you, let's be friends. That's what they say to me. Please be friends. But obviously we don't really want to be friends. And then I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah. It recognizes that to you that they appreciate how much work that you did for the day. It's not about the money. I don't think any vendor's gratuity is going to make or break their.
It's not.
I don't know.
Well, and that's why I think I get so heated about it, when people like force clients' hands on gratuity, because it's like, you should be running a business where you can pay your team based on what you are charging, period. And that gratuity should purely be extra.
Right.
It should just be an extra thank you. And I get it. I mean, there's companies, unlike planners, who have like their profit margins are smaller. They have a lot of overhead.
Right.
But then charge a service fee, because that's super clear. And then, allow the gratuity to be what the gratuity is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Getting off my soapbox now.
Okay. That was another big sigh.
It was. I think gratuity is such a, like we said, I think sometimes it gets people going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's provocative.
And can I tell a story about gratuity?
Yeah. That's why we have a podcast.
So my second wedding I ever did. Okay. Oh
I
God, you
don't
start
know.
laughing immediately.
I'm like, oh God, it was probably so bad. Okay, go.
The second wedding I ever did, the groom had envelopes for gratuity. He is drunk as a skunk.
Yeah.
And he had given me envelopes for gratuity. And what I used to do when I was nervous about people giving me all this money is I said, give me the gratuity in sealed envelopes, but I also need you to have a written out list of what envelopes you're giving me. You gave me one for the DJ, you gave me one. So I can match it up to make sure that that's accurate, right? It's
Yes.
covering my ass. So for some reason, I didn't get the list from them. And it's my second wedding. Like, I should follow my own rules. So he gave me the gratuities and I handed them out. And it was at a hotel or somewhere where they were staying, the same place as the reception. I was taking some stuff, like gifts and things, up to their room. And he's like, hold the elevator. I need to, or like it was the end of the night and I was helping them carry some stuff up. So I was in the elevator with them while they were going upstairs. And he started to get a little feisty with me because he said that he went up to like the venue manager and they said they didn't get an envelope from me. And he's like, I know I had an envelope. And I'm like freaking out because I'm like, I didn't have an envelope. Like, I know I didn't have an envelope for this person, but like, it's his word against mine. So I'm running in my head through all the scenarios of like, am I
Yes.
just going to have to pay this out of my pocket? I don't,
Yes.
whatever. And the elevator clicks at the top and his now bride goes, are you sure you don't still have that in your coat? And he looks and it's in an envelope in his jacket pocket in his coat. And he was drunk and he didn't remember that he hung on to that one because he wanted to give it himself. And I was
Oh
like,
God.
oh my God.
Yeah.
So nerve wracking.
Did he apologize?
I mean, kind of, right? I don't really remember.
Was he like, oh my God, Megan, I'm so sorry? Probably not.
No, I don't think so. I think he was just like, oh, sorry, haha, right? Just like get me out of this elevator immediately.
That just happened to me in November. I was giving out gratuities and I didn't have the photographers and I was flipping out. Like my heart is in my mouth or whatever the saying is.
Yeah.
And I love this photographer. And so I just went up to him and I was like, I have to tell you, I must have left the envelope for you at home. Like, cause I get home and I reorganize my stuff.
Yeah.
But the same thing, I'm like, I'm going to have to ask the couple what they gave. And so this is like a half hour of me stressing, looking through the wedding was on 3 different floors. I'm looking everywhere.
Yeah.
And I finally go, I have to check at home. And he goes, oh, they gave it to me yesterday. And I'm like, oh my God.
Well, it's always nerve wracking, right? Because it's cash. And I always think like if I have it in my folder where I have all my papers, if I pull a paper out and it comes out or something, I don't know.
Yeah. I know some planners down here who, and it's smart. I've never done it myself, but they actually have the couple provide the list themselves, like hand them a list on Friday at the rehearsal. And then when the gratuity gets handed out, there's a line next to each vendor where that vendor signs their name. And then they give that list back.
Yeah.
It just protects the planner, because it's like in case somebody does say, oh, because a lot of times too, it's like, for caterers or whatever, if you hand over a fat wad of cash to a caterer, they don't open that up and divvy it out. That goes back and it gets handed over to their director or whatever.
Right.
So it's like it just is that extra protection of like, I gave them the fat wad of cash and, whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I don't do that because it seems like a lot.
I don't do that either. I was just thinking like, yeah, I can see that, but I take a limited number of weddings now, and I take weddings that I feel like I connect obviously with these couples. And so
Yeah.
despite how much Jen makes fun of me, like I do really like all these people. And I think that we form a relationship where I just can't see them accusing me of stealing
No.
money. I mean, I guess I could be wrong. Maybe that's very naive of me.
There's not a bone in my body that could do it. Do you know that like recently I actually brought on 3 assistants that this was dumb, but I didn't charge the the client for those assistants. And so there was a moment when I had the envelopes for my team that I was like, what I should do is actually put it in my bank account and then use this to pay my team because I didn't charge.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the end of the day, I'm like, well, that's my problem, not my team's problem.
Right.
So, I'm like, I'm giving them their gratuity because that's what they earned and I'm going to pay them.
Yeah.
But, so it's like, I couldn't do it even if I'm just not an asshole. So sometimes I wish I was an asshole.
And that's why everybody wants to be friends with you after the wedding.
I know.
And buys you deer plates and diamond necklaces.
Oh my God, I love them. I'm gonna post a picture of them because they're just like, they're my favorite plates now. So anywho's it's okay. Are we done?
Yeah, I think we're done.
Okay. So in summary, please download all of our episodes.
Yes. That's more important than anything we said about the gratuity. Just download the episodes.
Exactly. Download our episodes. If you're listening in Milwaukee or Chicago, let us know because this is an open competition. And then tip your vendors.
Yeah.
2-drink minimum.
As long as they did a good job.
These laughs aren't going to pay our bills. Give us some money. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Bye, Jen.
Okay, bye.
Thanks so much for joining us again this week. If you have a wedding or travel-related story of your own that you would like us to share in a future episode, send us an email to theplannerspassport@gmail.com.
And be sure to follow us on Instagram at The Planner's Passport and follow all of our travel and wedding businesses, including We Roam Solo, Dare to Dream Travel, and Dare to Dream Weddings. And please, if you enjoy our show, remember to rate, review, and subscribe from wherever you are listening to this podcast.